All right, an absolute value inequality involves just that, an absolute value bars and an inequality. It's going to be less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than equal to. It's not going to be, I guess you could do a not equal to, but most of these are not either less than or greater than. All right, you can kind of already see what the first step is. You want to move everything that's not an absolute value bars to the other side of the equation, right? So the first thing you want to do, with us checking our work, we'll go back and do that in a second. The first thing you want to do is what for this equation? Add 5x, correct. So step one is to separate the absolute value from everything else. So you want to add 5x to both sides. You get 18x. Okay. The next thing I need to explain, and I will say it a lot because I know it's going to be easy to forget. Whenever you multiply or divide by a negative number and you're dealing with an inequality, you have to flip this sign. Okay? Notice how the sign was pointing left. However, when you divide by a negative number, you will now point it to the right. And that's only if you're multiplying or dividing by a negative, okay? If this was a positive 3 and I divided both sides by 3, I would not flip that sign. Okay? Only when you're multiplying or dividing by negatives, so now this is going to be pointing right. 18 over x is negative, 18x over negative 3 is negative 6x. Okay, so is the absolute value isolated? Okay? This is actually very similar to the lesson we just did. That was our first step in that lesson. Get that by itself. The next step is actually very similar too, in the fact that you're going to have two separate equations, okay? Or not equations, inequalities. For your first one, is the same as yesterday's lesson. You will just delete the absolute value bars. You will have x minus 2 is greater than or equal to negative 6x. All right, just like yesterday. So there's your first inequality. The second one involves two things. Yes, you delete the absolute value bars. You also flip the inequality that you have, so it becomes less than or equal to again, and then you change the sign of what's on the right. So since this is negative 6x, this will end up being positive 6x. And I will actually write that, simplify that, because it's a double negative. So you'll have x minus 2 is less than or equal to 6x on the right. So you see these are very similar. One, they're just flipping the sign and changing the sign of what's on the right. That's all you're doing. Now you have two inequalities to solve, and that's what we're going to do next. Solve each of these inequalities. For the next step, we're going to subtract x. We have okay. Now I didn't divide, I didn't multiply by negative, so I don't need to flip the sign yet. We get negative 2 is greater than or equal to negative 7x, right? Now how would you get x by itself? Yeah, divide by the coefficient of x, which is negative 7, and you're right, you have to flip the sign, okay? So we're going to get 2/7, flip that, because we divided by negative, is less than or equal to x. Right. Now, one more thing after that. You always want your x to be on the left. You're going to see why in a second. So how can we make this statement so that x is on the left? Yep. So just make sure that if it's opening towards the x, like it is here, technically this is x is greater than or equal to 2/7, right? Because it's opening towards the x. So she's right. You would actually just make sure it's pointing in the same way it's pointing towards the x. You just write it like this. You're more or less just flipping the entire thing. Okay, these two mean the same thing. This one reads 2/7 is less than or equal to x. It's the same thing as x is greater than or equal to 2/7.
When it's not negative, you don't have to flip it?
Or do you have to flip it just because we divided? We flipped it because we divided by -7. So if you just divide by positive, it just stays. Correct. Exactly. Mm-hmm. All right. On the right side, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to subtract x from both sides. We get -2 is less than or equal to 5x. Here's kind of your question over here. We're dividing by 5 to get x by itself. You don't need to flip the sign. However, you do also want to make sure that x is on the left. So you're going to write it as x is greater than or equal to -2/5. So just like yesterday, we have two answers here. X is greater than or equal to 2/7, and x is greater than or equal to -2/5. Okay, before I move on to the next step, I need to do some review on graphing stuff on the number line, inequalities. All right, we'll start with some simple things first. So the first thing we're going to do is x is greater than or equal to -2. Not equal to, sorry, just greater than. Okay, when you don't have a bar underneath here, you do an open circle. All right, that's because it doesn't include that number, right? When you do have a bar, you will put a closed circle. So x is greater than or equal to -2. This is why you want to put the x to the left, because you will always shade the region that this is pointing towards. So does everybody see that this is pointing right? Then just shade to the right of -2. That's all you have to do. You can just squiggle it or whatever. Yeah. All right. X is less than or equal to 1. All right. We're going to put a solid point at 1 because there's a bar here, and we will shade everything to the left of 1 because that's the way it's pointing. Is that what we're doing on function? Yes. Oh, okay. So what we need to do now with these is graph these. So we're going to graph x is greater than or equal to 2/7. 2/7 is somewhere between 0 and 1. It won't matter. You don't have to be precise. Just put some point between 0 and 1. -2/5 will be somewhere between 0 and -1. Okay. So here's my x is greater than or equal to 2/7. It's going to be shaded with this red line. And then x is greater than or equal to -2/5 will be the blue line. Okay. Now the question now is, now that you've shaded everything, how do you write your answer? And it actually depends, okay? Most of the time, you're just going to put them together, whatever they add up to be. Not where they actually intersect, where they're both shaded, but where everything's shaded, so the entire thing. So that means starting here, all the way will be my answer, because that's what's shaded. Okay? So what do you think your final answer would be? If it includes everything that's shaded. It's actually just going to be one statement.
It's really simple, but
it's just going to be x is greater than or equal to -2/5.
okay, so
Okay? So this part didn't really matter because it's already part of that. Okay? Now there is a situation where you only include where they cross, and before we finish this example, I'll show you that. But anyway, the final answer is to write out, where everything is shaded, anything that is shaded. Now the reason we do it for this example is because they're going in the same direction. Okay, they were both pointed to the right. When that happens, you will just include where everything is shaded. The case where you won't, and we will do this on the worksheet. Okay, let's say that your final answer, okay, let's have -2 there and +2 over there. Let's say that for whatever reason, you shaded like this, so it was going left, and then your other answer was going right. So they're going in the opposite direction, and they cross each other. In that case, and only in that case, do you include where they cross each other.
how would you write that?
So in that, you would write that -2 is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to 2. In other words, it's in between -2 and 2, so you have to write a compound inequality. Other than that, there's another scenario. I might as well go over it since we're here. This is the easiest one to write. There will also be times, let's just do the same thing. where one goes like that and the other goes like that. So they go in opposite directions, but they don't cross each other. Well, you just put those together like we did before. X is less than, we'll shade it. X is less than or equal to -2, and then you'll just write or X is greater than or equal to 2. You only put them together when they go in opposite directions and they cross each other. Okay, I know it's a lot to remember, so let me get you the worksheet. We'll go through that together.